Hi everyone, I'm definitely getting sick and I'm wearing my house dress and that plant is wilting away there in the background, but other than that I'm feeling very positive about this video today. We're gonna get through this together. In 1986, President Ferdinand Marcos was overthrown by the people of the Philippines, and for good reason. He was responsible for reprehensible human rights violations, extravagant personal spending of government money, and corruption that the country has yet to fully heal from. After being overthrown, Marcos fled with his family to exile in Hawaii, where he died in September of 1989. If things had ended there, he would just be a bad, dead dude, not an iconic corpse. But things did not end there. It's because of the controversy, travels, and the frankly bizarre treatment of Marcos's body that he becomes today's iconic corpse. During Ferdinand Marcos's 20-year regime as president, dictator, of the Philippines, he was hardly what most would characterize as a hero. Having instated martial law, Marcos is consistently characterized as having plundered the country, raising the Philippines' foreign debt from $2.7 billion in 1972 to $28.2 billion in 1986. The Marcos family and their associates lived in luxury while the country struggled. Even more horrifying is the data that indicates that the military under Marcos's command was responsible for killing over 3,000 people, torturing 35,000 people, and arresting 70,000 people, all to uphold his absolute control on the country. In 2004, Marcos was named as the second most corrupt leader of all time by corruption watchdog group Transparency International. We're number 2. Woo! So, in 1986, after the murder of an anti-Marcos politician, the people of the Philippines took to the streets to protest, supported by the Catholic Church and bolstered by the rebel members of the military. They called themselves the People Power Revolution. After 4 days of protest, Marcos, his family, and retainers boarded 2 U.S. airplanes arranged by President Ronald Reagan and went into exile in Hawaii, in a mansion in the Makiki Heights area of Oahu. And there the Marcoses stayed in relative luxury until 1989, when Ferdinand died of an autoimmune disease at age 72. And from there, the games they did begin. Disfigured from his illness, the face of Marcos's corpse was swollen from edema, which is the accumulation of fluid under the skin. Embalmer Frank Malabed, who is known as something of an embalmer to the stars in the Philippines, was charged with making the dictator's face look more appealing post-mortem. So when Marcos's face was drained of fluid during the embalming process, it quickly took on a shriveled appearance. So while Marcos's body remained intact and was embalmed as usual, his face had to be reconstructed with wax. While there was speculation that the body that lay in state was not real, Malabed maintains that aside from the face and hair, the corpse was all Marcos. Once Marcos's body was prepared, his wife Imelda, you know, the lady with all the shoes, placed him in a glass-top refrigerated casket at Doughty Temple in Kaneohe, Oahu. That's my hometown, you guys. There was a half-wax embalmed Philippine dictator living in my town when I was 5 years old. This is the closest I've ever been to an iconic corpse. I feel like a celebrity. Once there, Imelda spared no expense for her husband, making sure that the air conditioning in his casket was always running, and allegedly had Handel's Messiah playing inside the casket 24/7. Imelda supposedly even rolled Ferdinand out for his birthday, so a group of his followers and loved ones could sing him happy birthday. Happy birthday to your corpse. Marcos was there in the temple for 4 years, which means I actually lived down the road from a half-wax embalmed Philippine dictator in an air-conditioned glass-topped casket playing Handel's Messiah 24/7 from ages 5 to 9. Alright. While Marcos was in residence at Doughty Temple with all the AC and music and whatnot, the power company threatened to pull the plug on Marcos if the family didn't pay their thousands of dollars worth of unpaid energy bills. Fortunately for them, a Marcos admirer stepped in to pick up the tab. In 1993, the government, led by President Fidel Ramos, who was a second cousin to Marcos, allowed Marcos's corpsicle to return to the Philippines. However, instead of being buried with a state funeral at the Heroes Cemetery in Manila, as his family wanted, the government insisted that he could only be buried in his home province of Ilocos Norte, in the city of Batak. So Marcos arrived back in the Philippines to much fanfare, greeted by his remaining loyalist. Malabed, the embalmer, was on hand to attend to Marcos' admittedly decaying corpse, speedily repairing and redressing the dictator for viewing. Malabed was very concerned that people might see wet spots on Marcos' body and make bad comments. People are so picky. In Batak, Marcos' casketed corpse was laid next to his mother's, who had been on display waiting for Marcos to return since 1988, when she died at 96. Marcos went on to be displayed for over 20 years in a glass casket described as looking like an aquarium inside a specially built mausoleum. This time, a source says, Imelda piped in Mozart for her husband's corpse instead of Handel. With a nearby Marcos museum documenting his virtue and greatness, the double whammy Marcos memorials were supposed to lure tourists, but never ended up delivering the way Imelda hoped. Folks were more drawn to the casino and golf course in the area where Marcos once played. I personally think the corpse is a bigger draw than a casino, but 7-year-old Caitlin never went to visit him when he was right there in my town, so I'm one to talk, right? But through all this, Imelda, his wife, still petitioned to have her husband buried in Manila at the Heroes Cemetery. In life, Marcos had claimed to be a highly decorated World War II hero, leading a guerrilla resistance unit during the Japanese occupation. But upon further investigation, the claims were found to be highly unlikely, if not entirely fraudulent. Those sticking points, combined with the actions of his presidency, didn't really make him Heroes Cemetery material. However, in 2016, President Duterte, a man protesters have called Marcos' Tinder match made in hell, allowed Marcos' body to be secretly moved to Manila and buried in the Heroes Cemetery. When Duterte first announced his decision to give Marcos a hero's burial, due in large part to his own family's history of loyalty to the Marcos family, and the fact that Duterte is kind of a Marcos fanboy, protests erupted, taking to the streets and social media, the Philippines being the most active social media users in the world. Protesters employed the hashtags #MarcosNotAhero, #MarcosBurialProtest, and #NeverAgain, among others. #FreeCharlesBurn, #MarcosNotAhero. Victims of Marcos' regime asked the Supreme Court to stop the burial. 30,000 people signed a petition against the interment, calling it an affront to the thousands of lives tortured and murdered during his reign. But in the end, the Marcos family got their way. Duterte buried Marcos in the Heroes Cemetery, complete with a 21-gun salute, and ended the almost 30-year odyssey of Ferdinand Marcos' corpse. So there you have it, Ferdinand Marcos, dictator, war hero, iconic corpse. Tell us which iconic corpse you want to see next. Your suggestions matter. This video was a suggestion from our fine viewers in the Philippines. Kamusta?
Hey, hi, real quick, before you go, it's me in my car because everything I do is very professional and well done. That's not true, but you know what is professional and well done, thanks to your generosity, is our podcast, Death in the Afternoon. We spent 3 days this weekend recording at this beautiful studio with a fantastic engineer, and it's gonna sound just beautiful. We are almost at our fundraising goal where we can send it off to be edited and have original music put over it. And yeah, no pressure to donate, but there are some really excellent rewards. Signed books, signed postcards, behind the scenes vlog, and at any donation you're entered to win a signed merchandise package with really cool stuff in it. So yeah, we really thank you, and I think that it sounds fantastic. Hey dude, I'm on FaceTime. I'm not talking to myself. I'm talking to tens of thousands of people on the internet.
This video was made with generous donations from death enthusiasts just like you. Iconic corpse.